Can you hear that? I am speaking softly today because I'm so relaxed, made peaceful, if you will, by the beautiful composition that you're hearing, which was created by today's guest. Someone who I can honestly say has reinvigorated my passion for connecting with the artists I admire. For years, I've been a fan of today's guest. Actually, he was one of the first people I ever reached out to when we started Filmmakers in advertising, and I was finally able to have the genuine pleasure of speaking with him. Composer and artist Luke Atencio has renewed my faith in meeting your heroes. With 2 decades of experience crafting music for film, TV, and advertising, Luke's artistry is undeniable. Now, I don't ever want to come across as egotistical, but film scores are kind of my thing. I love them, and my friends acted like I was weird for years for listening to composers and film scores instead of the weekly top 40 or whatever. So when I say Luke is good, please believe he is good. Luke has unique methods of building his signature orchestral sounds, and he shares insights into his process with us and how he finds inspiration. But beyond his incredible talent, the real delight of this discussion was discovering Luke's generous spirit and his emphasis on collaboration. The more I got to speak with him, the more I honestly want to work with him someday. He articulates how unity among artists can multiply the good, as he says, rather than fostering competition. I'm so calm. So prepare yourself for invaluable advice from someone who is very good at what they do on creating and working with composers. And join me as we dive into the intricate world of music composition with the brilliant Luke Atencio.
My name is Luke Atencio. I'm a composer. I create music for film and TV and advertising. And that's what I've been busying myself with for the last 20 years.
In my favorite fashion of how this works, I have pages of questions that I won't get to, and we started talking about something else, and I want to go straight back to the something else.
Totally random, yeah.
What you're talking about is something that I think a lot of artists struggle with.
Yes. What we were talking about before you pressed record was there's a reason why I chose to be behind the camera and behind the scenes and basically in post-production where nobody sees me. It's because I feel more comfortable staying out of the way and off camera. That's why I think social media has been also hard for me, because you are supposed to expose yourself, and I would rather let the art speak, but we're living in a time where people want more than the art. They want to see the person behind the art, which I totally understand, because I also want that. With people that I'm interested in, filmmakers, composers, it doesn't come natural to me.
I have found with other musicians, specifically, I don't know if it's the sound world or the music world.
Yeah.
Your lot are highly creative and either maybe a combination of severely introverted or comfortable just saying, no, you get my work and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas, say, if you're an actor or something, you're having to put it all out there as much as you can to try and get people to appreciate what you're selling.
Yeah.
And you get to, as I'm looking at your Instagram here, do this cool, moody photo, make your copy upside down. And this is all, it's very cool. I was wondering as I was looking at do you take your own photos for this stuff? Because all of your photos look like they were taken by a professional.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. Well, I have a background in graphic design.
Ah, there we go.
So I was a graphic designer before I went out on my own to be a composer. So I've loved music all my life. And then I started creating music around when I was 14. But at the same time, I started also taking photos. So I had my dad's Canon AE1, and I would take photos on the AE1. And I mean, that was just what was available to me at the time. And at that time, it was just film. Film wasn't an aesthetic choice. That's what was available. So I basically started taking photos the same time I started making music. And it's always gone hand in hand. And then I did a program when I was in high school where I would go to the community college several times a week and study commercial art And a part of that was graphic design. We started learning Photoshop. So I've been also designing for a really, really long time. As long as I've been making music, I've been designing and taking photos. The other day I was talking to my friend who also is taking photos, and we were like, it's hard for us to identify as like photographers because we don't see ourselves that way. But then when we stop and think about it, like, man, I've been taking photos for a really long time. So, but I appreciate you saying that.
Well, it's just kind of funny to me that you've been bashful about sharing yourself, because you have the ultimate, you have the best skill sets for promoting yourself between graphic design and your skilled photography, and you clearly have good taste. So,
well, I appreciate that. I get super nerdy. Like I said, I love tweaking and having fun and just really just out of curiosity and just exploring. But I do as much graphic design as I do music, probably. I mean, I'll have like, I do my own album covers, and I'll have like 15
do you
different,
really?
I have like 15 different versions of all of my album covers. I mean, I'm just like obsessively iterating.
Well, hang on a second, because I've been
versions.
looking at your album covers for the last 10 years.
Well, thanks, man.
So, and you'll have to tell me how to say it, but one of the original, it's funny, I'll have to tell you about this after we stop recording, but oh, I'm being so dangerous right now.
Yeah,
at least for me, legally, nobody cares.
Oh, okay.
One of the, so I told you we're about to deliver. We're about to deliver like my first feature film.
Yes.
But the one that my investor wanted to film, get ready for this, I called it "Haunting the Ghost."
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. What nobody knows is that
Okay.
that's a stolen title.
Okay, dude. Well, I'm honored.
From one Luke Atencio from 2016. You have a song called "Haunting a Ghost."
Yes.
And I wrote the concept for it when listening to that. And I was like, well, if I change this one word, then it's mine.
Well, I would have let you have it anyway. I'm so honored.
Well, I'll have to tell you about that. But I thought that was so cool. But part of the reason I brought that up is because, did you do this album artwork too? And how do you say this word? Because I don't want to try.
Skumascot.
Skumascot.
And that's an original score for my very dear friend, Jared Clayton, the artist formerly known as Jared Connect. That was a film that he created with Madison Hatch. They went out to Iceland and filmed that themselves.
Wow.
And then came back to the US, and my other friend, Andy Catarizano, and it was just a generated project, passion project. And my friend Andy, who's a DP, he introduced me to Jared, and we've become really close friends. We've been friends and working together since then. That was our first project together, and then we've done like a bunch of ads and other things together. But that was his film, and that's still one of my favorite experiences I've ever had creating music for film. Yeah. Because of the friendship and because of, it was one of my first times that I actually got to like really do narrative, create little motifs and stuff for the characters and the, little themes, even though it's not like, full on, soaring thematic material, but like little motifs for the different, characters and stuff. And oh man, it's still one of my absolute favorites. So that artwork is just their frames from the film.
Are they? Wow.
So one of the parts, like where he puts his hand like on this ice in this cave in Iceland, and then the aurora, the northern lights, the aurora borealis. So, but I'm big into like text. I like fonts, and I'm of course obsessed with Helvetica and Futura. I think that's Futura. So, which are the classic fonts that either designers love or hate.
I don't want to. I don't know if this is insulting or a compliment, but like you would never know that you're the one taking your own photos and doing your own designs. And
well, I appreciate it.
You were kind of, I think, whether you realized it or not, you were preparing yourself for the present dayness of it all, I guess.
Well, it's really encouraging that you say that, because I've never looked at it that way. I just have a fear of social media. I have a fear of being exposed and out in the open. And, like I've always just wanted to speak through my music and my art. Actually, that's one of the things that I think either consciously or subconsciously pulled me towards wanting to be a film composer is that, in the 90s and stuff, these guys weren't really in the forefront,
Yeah.
like they got to just sort of be in the background, and you would sort of maybe see one or two publicity photos of them in maybe like a magazine article or something, or you'd
Yeah.
see a photo of them on stage, with the orchestra or something, but they really got to be behind the scenes. And we're just living in a time where people just want to know stuff and see stuff, which again, I also do. I just wish I could be the exception to that and be like, yeah, everybody else has to show themselves, but I still get to stay in the shadows,
Yeah.
But
This is subjective, but I think there's actually a line, because I think people do want to see you, but I think it's because we want to enjoy following you. And I think we want to kind of root for you, because you said something really interesting. I want to resist because there's just such an overload of the discussion right now, because there's so many. I probably see 20 bad thumbnails a day with someone's hands on their head and their eyes and mouth wide open going, is AI taking our jobs?
oh, right.
But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think when
Yeah.
you said something, I used to just want to speak through my work. And I said that last week to somebody about how, how are we going to survive the AI revolution when everybody can make something? Is it still rare
Yeah.
and valuable
Yeah.
anymore? And
Yeah.
well, fine.
Right.
Now everybody can make something. Great. So
Right.
now what's left is taste. I
Sure.
guess. So now I'm just
Yeah.
going to want to listen to the people who I want to listen to, and by
Right.
the creative choices that you make. So I would say that
Right.
you are primed to survive that, I guess. The more I'm finding out about you between Photoshop and your photography and your designing of your own album covers and speaking through your work, you are the type of person that I think someone would go, yeah, that's who I want to follow. I
Well,
don't need to
thanks.
follow so and so who's cranking out 10 AI songs per day. This guy
Right.
disappeared in Iceland for a year and gave me these 3 songs, and I'd rather listen to that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, that's encouraging because I think I often think I don't know what I have to offer, or I think there's also like a push right now for things to be even more raw and more like kind of candid. But I like crafting. It's really hard for me to take a photo and not color grade it. Also, it's why I'm obsessed with DPs. It's why I'm obsessed with colorists,
Hmm.
because it's just such an exciting part of the process. When I get footage in, when I'm scoring something, I mean, that's always one of the first questions I ask the director, like who's shooting, and who's coloring this, because that informs what I do so much. The look
Yeah.
and the feel and the tone. It's like I hear the music when I see the image, it's like it's
That's actually cool, because I'd like to compliment you by saying I actually think your music this is going to sound like such a weird fan fest. By the way, you've just got
no,
to
dude.
everyone just needs to grease their
well,
wheels, because there's going to be a lot of fanboying.
dude. I really appreciate it, man.
Well, I have to caveat for I've never mentioned it before because I've never had to, but if there was any arena in which I ever sounded like a pretentious cinephile, it's composing and score, because I just love it.
I love it.
And
Well,
you said
let the
something
nerding
else.
begin.
Yeah, you said something else now. A second thing, basically, in a way, I'm going to paraphrase what you said about when you're looking at DP's work, and I'm mixing it with something you said, but it's kind of like they're talking to you a little bit, and their style and the choices that they're making. If they're decent at what they're doing, or if they have a mood or preferences or a style or a way that they might be like talking to you. I was actually going to say that your music, I found you 10 years ago when I first heard Carved in Mayhem by Dan DiFelice, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Which is a short film, technically, correct? That's the lead title. It's not like it's not an ad, anything. It was always
it's like a tone poem, or like a visual poem.
Yeah.
Audio visual poem.
Well, I found you through that.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that your music is so emotional and has such range and is so deep that I would find myself writing to your music. So the same way that you maybe say you look at a DP's work and you start writing to your images, I would say, and I would hope you've heard this before, but I think your music is so good that you can start writing to it. Hence that haunting the ghost story, or haunting a ghost. thing. It's
Yes.
funny,
Thank
which 10
you.
years ago, I never thought I'd get to meet the guy who made the
Oh,
song to say, hey, can
man.
I steal your title
Yeah.
if I make a modification to it? Did you name that song, by the way?
I did name that song
Of course you did.
because, okay, dude, thank you. It just goes to show that the nerdiness never, there's no end. Like
Yeah.
I love world building, and in any sort of role, like when I'm on a project, like on a film, I'm the composer, and that's kind of my role and the way I help in building the world. But when it comes to my own projects, whether it's my own albums or just putting together a score album from a film that I've done, I have lists of names. I have lists of album titles. I have tons of iterations of the artwork. I just kind of dig and dig and dig and dig. But I think it's because I enjoy the process. You kind of want to live in that world, and in a way you don't really want to leave. It's more like, I think continuing to like tweak is more making an excuse to not have to leave that world. I think because I just, in some of the worlds I enjoy being in so much. So, but Haunting a Ghost was because this guy in Skumascot, the character is going to try to find his girlfriend who passed away, and he's searching for memories of her. But it's more like he's haunting her. You know what I'm saying? She's the one that's passed away, but it's more like he's following her around as opposed to like a ghost haunting a person. It's like a person haunting a ghost. And I thought that was like a really interesting concept, which was embedded in the film that Jared wrote, But I go really deep into the stuff that I score, or a lot of times I'll name songs based on something that is in this, a line from the script, or in the case of like ads, it's like when Dan sends me a treatment, a lot of the names of the songs I'll lift directly from the treatment, which is something like that he wrote.
Allow me, if you will, to unnaturally continue to guide the discussion. And
Do it. Yeah, well,
because I want people to hear a little bit. Not a lot of people ever get to die. Even you mentioned ads, right? Which filmmakers and advertising. We should, right?
Yes.
Like if you're a filmmaker and you're making shorts and features, you get to go all the way in and create sounds with somebody.
Yeah.
If you're doing ads or maybe short form videos, YouTube, social media, what have you, you're probably picking something that already exists, which we'll come back to MusicBed in your time there, by the way.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I mentioned that is because they don't get the luxury of collaborating with somebody. They get to go to music. We'll just stick with MusicBed for now.
Yeah.
Because they can't do it on Apple Music or Spotify, of course.
Keep plugging MusicBed. They're
yeah? Okay.
I love them. Yeah, I've been with them for 10 years.
And you've appreciated that relationship with
Absolutely.
them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They've been wonderful for me and a lot of my friends who also make music. So
I'm going to ask more about that.
Yes, 100%.
But most, I would say, filmmakers, when we can't afford a composer like to truly bring you on, we're finding something in your library and we're going, well, that'll go good over my drone shot in this country. That'll work.
Yeah.
But before we come back to that, I want to mention, discuss your process a little bit.
Okay.
Let's go off. So I mentioned Dan DiFelice, right?
Yeah,
my brother. I think I'm going to get real creative here and do a triple. I'm going to get some background on you.
Okay.
A little bit about your process that informs people
on
how you work, and hear about how you went about something.
Amazing.
So, like I said before, your music always feels so emotional and it kind of tells a good story. Like I feel like I met you 10 years ago when you were talking to me, this cool guy who was talking to me through the music.
And now I'm not cool anymore.
No.
Now the shroud of mystery has been lifted. You're like, I thought he was cool, but he's a goofball.
So when we first met, you said something that totally surprised me.
Okay.
But it was very inspiring and kind of exciting. And I think a lot of young people and up and comers should hear this.
Okay.
Like I said, I first found your music through Carved in Mayhem, the short film. And so that's how I first heard your song. And the visuals, of course, Dan did a great job.
Oh my gosh.
I kind of nerded out the one time I met him in New York.
Khalid's DPing.
Yeah. And I just assumed, as I told you, I was like, oh man, these guys must have connected because they're all big and cool and they have reps and stuff like that.
Right.
And you told me that that's not at all, and you're laughing, that you told me that's not at all how that happened.
Right.
So before we talk about how you created that work, would you mind sharing a little bit of that story about how you made this very awesome, very, very awesome short film that I will link called Carved in Mayhem, and how you
Yeah.
made the sounds for that. And then we'll start talking about how you guys created that sound.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I met Dan when he was in high school. I was working as a graphic designer and playing with a band, and the lead singer and the bass player from the band were from New Jersey. Shout out to
Where were you at the time?
To the Egan family. I was living in Colorado, so I'm from Colorado Springs. He was a mutual friend, and he came over to hang out. Him and his girlfriend, who's now his wife, but he was still in high school, and we just met and hit it off through music. He knew a bunch of cool bands, and we were just chatting and stuff. And so we actually just stayed in touch, and we would email each other like, you know, what are you listening to? Oh, this. What do you listen to? Oh, that. So we would just write back and forth. And then he became involved with film stuff. And, you know, I had started scoring as well. So I was a graphic designer, but I met a director in my city who's a very good friend of mine, Steven Vidano. And I asked him if I could do music for him, and he gave me a shot, and I started working with him.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was this like an artistic school or a community, or did you just happen to be a few artists in this area who were connecting because you kind of were aware of each other's creations?
Yeah, I mean, there was some filmmakers that I was around. Being in graphic design and being in music and stuff, you just meet people, you know. So yeah, so I had connected with a director in my city and started doing music for him. And then I had met Dan, and then he started doing film stuff. And then so one of his first projects, I actually did the music for. One of his very first film projects.
So Carved in Mayhem was not your first thing together?
No, that was actually years later.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how many years, maybe 5 or something. Because then he went to college. He started getting involved with visual effects.
That's right. He is very visual effects talented, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So he was a compositor. So he started doing film stuff. He got into visual effects and then kind of circled back around to directing and creating of his own films, but now with his new kind of skill set of an expertise in visual effects, which is why Carved in Mayhem, it's infused with VFX, but in such a tasteful way that you don't really notice it. You know, I mean, the biggest compliment I think to him and the VFX team is always like, I thought those were real statues. Like I didn't know there was any visual effects in there.
To me, the only giveaway, and this was 2015, that it was visual effects was, I just remember thinking, I was like, that statue doesn't exist, because I would know about it, because that's so
or
cool.
It's in the Louvre, and
or
I don't think they were able to borrow it. Right.
Yeah. It's in a catacomb in Italy or something.
Totally.
I would know about it. Yeah.
Totally.
Let's continue down the train of thought. Let's pop up to Carved in Mayhem.
Yeah.
And so for people who don't know, now correct me where I'm wrong. This is just I haven't seen it in, I don't know, 7-8 years or something, but I'm going to jump in and praise you again, which you've already heard me say this, but I'm going to say it again so people can hear that. One of my favorite things here, like I told you when I first got to meet you, was I have remembered since then, the thing that stood out to me the most is, I'd love to know what you officially call it, if it has an official name, but the turning point in that film, when it goes from dark to uplifting.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten whatever you do with I want to say the piano. It's a very gritty, like shaky cam, like we're following him running. And he says, so I cleaned up my act, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it goes from this like deep, kind of sad, like heavy, but, you know, very graceful, heavy music, to this uplifting, very pretty thing. It's like an emotional swell in a good direction. Yeah. And I've always remembered that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. That's effective. And then here I get to meet the guy who did it.
Oh,
so I'd love to know, let's use that as an example in the process.
Yeah.
Dan, so Dan comes to you. Yeah. And let's pop the hood for the filmmakers who say, man, I sure would love to be able to work with a composer and not just pull his music off of MusicBed, which we love, by the way.
Yeah.
We love MusicBed.
But you can also hire me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm available.
But like, if we get to work with you,
be hard. Yeah.
How do you have that discussion, and how do you find those moments? Does Dan say, I need something to happen here? Do you say, I'm sure it goes both ways, right? I'm sure sometimes someone says, I need this. And I would assume some other times you go, hey, what if this?
Yeah.
So if you could just explore the process a little bit of that, because this is one song, by the way, right? One
Yeah.
long song that
Yes.
encapsulates the whole short film.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about the process and how you found it with Dan. What was communicated to you, and then how you
Yeah.
built around that communication.
Yeah. Well, Dan has really beautiful treatments. His treatments are totally beautiful. I keep all of them in a folder. You know, when we're done with the project, I've got a folder full of his treatments. They're well written. They have beautiful imagery. So, I mean, a lot of times well, all the time, basically. Also, when we work on ads, I start creating music based on the treatment.
Yeah, you said
So,
that. That's
so he'll
cool.
just send me the treatment, and he knows to only send it to me when it's like go time. Because he knows once I get that treatment, it's just on. I just start creating. I can't not create once I open that treatment
Right.
and start seeing the imagery and reading the story and stuff like that. So there was a treatment for Mayhem. So he sent
That's
me
cool.
the treatment, and I just started creating, and that's what we do. I mean, I just start creating stuff and start iterating. I'll create a bunch of different pieces of music, maybe different versions of each one of those pieces of music, and we just start that process of trying to find it.
Yeah.
And especially with things like that, which are like, you know, art films or films that are, you know, not ads, where it is just for the sake of creativity, expression, storytelling. I'll go really deep. I mean, I go deep on the ad stuff too, but I go really deep and just start creating and trying to find stuff. And that one, I mean, I think we worked on Mayhem for a whole year, not like every single day, 8 hours a day, but, you know, over the course of a year, we worked on it. And, you know, I made a bunch of different pieces of music. And then as I'm creating the music, also the visuals are coming together.
Yeah.
Then they're shooting. Then the VFX starts to come in, and I'm just constantly getting updated. You know, like I'll tell Dan, like, just send me anything. Like if you have, like for instance, this ad that we did for Renault, which is like another one, which is Dan and Khalid and myself, which I always say it's the Mayhem trifecta. You know, it just always makes me so happy when the three of us are on a project together, because Mayhem was so special that it's fun whenever it happens that the three of us are on projects together. But so like for instance, this Renault one, he was shooting in I think Slovenia with Khalid, and he just sent me one still image of this pilot, and it like clicked for me. I like wrote the whole bulk of the track just seeing one still image of this woman.
Yeah.
It was just so striking, and like that's why I never know where that inspiration is going to strike and at what point I'm actually going to like find it. And of course I'm like also sweating bullets. Like there's always that fear, like, am I going to find it? You know, like you're digging, and you're like, oh man, you know, and always so relieved when you land on it, you know? So with Mayhem, it was just kind of like a back and forth thing. And then one day you sit down and you start messing around and you find something and you're like, oh my gosh, I think that this actually could really work. And then, you know, send it to Dan. And he's like, dude, this is totally it. Like, this is it. Then you're like really relieved, you know, because first when you create something with music, it first has to work for me. I'm the first guinea pig. That's why it's really nice to be able to also score to picture, because you're seeing in real time if this is working, if it's working for me or not. If it does work for me, chances are it might work for the director. And a lot of times, you know, something that works for me, it does work for the director, but maybe he's wanting to push a little more and maybe see what else we can come up with, or maybe it's not quite there for him yet. And that's good information for me to have. And then I go back and I dig a little deeper and try to find it, you know, and just waiting for that moment where it works 100% for me, it works 100% for the director. And so, you know, thankfully we were able to find it. After we found what it was, then I had the sounds kind of sample, you know, from sample libraries and stuff. And then I brought in real horn player, real
Did you?
violin.
You brought in musicians to do those pieces. You didn't
Yeah,
just like electronically do them yourself.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I've wondered about that actually.
Yeah.
That was going to be one of my questions because you
Yeah.
have you have range, at least
Well,
on the
thanks.
instruments that I hear.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
but then again, you have strings behind you in your studio here.
Yes, which I
Uh,
misuse.
which you
But
well, you misuse intentionally, and it sounds pretty cool.
right. Well,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. I usually can tell. I'm like, that sounds like he's doing something on the strings. I have no idea what it is.
Experimenting. And then I bring real professionals in to do like the actual, like if I need a beautiful melody, like you would need a real cello player, a real violist or
That's
something.
cool. So it sounds like you kind of set the music first, and then
yes.
you come to an agreement, and you say, "It sounds like this is the direction that you want. Can I
Yeah.
go in this direction, full speed here?"
Yeah.
And then that sounds budget efficient too, right?
Well,
Rather
yeah.
than
I
just
mean, what it is basically like a lot of times stuff starts and ends with kind of the software instruments, except for that with me, I always am adding real stuff, even myself. I'm creating, I'm adding real texture to it. But depending on where we're at in the process, it's like you kind of create a mock-up. Although I'm kind of obsessive about my demos or whatever, whether you call it a demo or a sketch. For me, they're usually kind of finished pieces of music. Like I'll go in and also play real stuff because when you're dealing with basically like a demo or a sketch that you're presenting to a filmmaker, it's like a proof of concept. And so even though most of the directors I work with say, dude, you don't have to finish it that much because I might listen to it and just say, oh, I don't think that's the right direction.
good point.
But for me, I feel like the kind of music that we're creating, it only speaks if it is, because, it's not like I'm saying if I had the luxury of working the way like John Williams and Spielberg work, where Spielberg comes in and John Williams says, here's the tune, and he's like, yeah, great. I love it. There's the theme. And then he just writes the rest of the score around it. So much of the concept and the idea is the sound, the texture. And so it's less about, do you like this melody or do you like this progression? And it's more about, how do you feel about this vibe and this combination of weird sounds? And a lot of times it's like, that's really cool. Okay, let's keep moving. That's the track. Let's keep working on that one and refining it. So, and I mean, Carved in Mayhem was incredibly special, I think, because it's really where we found our voice. We really found our voice.
I get that.
With
that makes sense with that one.
That piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just really special, because we took the time that we needed to create it. And it was just really great to be able to not be rushed and to just, take the time we needed until we felt it was ready. And because me and Dan have pretty much done everything together. And that's, I think, when we really found our voice together as kind of a filmmaking team,
It's awesome.
Yeah.
To kind of button up that narrative for anybody who didn't grab it, because we dove in a little bit.
Sure.
You and Dan did not meet through reps or through agencies.
No,
we met
friends.
as friends in high school.
Yeah.
And you're a bit of a dynamic duo, sometimes trio with some of the other artists, maybe even more.
Yeah.
So you guys met in high school, started creating together, and you have continued to create together.
Yes.
To work that is large, that I have then since seen several times. Yeah. So tell me about MusicBed, because as I was saying before, for anybody who doesn't know, I would say you, Ryan Talbert, Tony Anderson, and maybe a couple other names have pretty much been the top MusicBed people for a long time. I bet I could get the top 5 commercial directors that I usually see on here, or top 5 short filmmakers, and they would all know your name, because everybody has either temped with your music or probably just tried to buy the rights to your music.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, what has that been like to be involved with MusicBed for so long? And I know that's not specific, but I'm just curious to hear about it. I mean, you're kind of one of the guys on MusicBed. Do you ever get sick of your own music? I know probably not, I would assume, since you know the back end of that. But I mean, I don't want to say I get sick of your music, but sometimes I hear something and I'm just like, oh, wow, they went to song number 7 on MusicBed. Got it.
I do really wish that filmmakers would dive deeper into our catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
because, we have a lot of music on there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I totally understand when filmmakers are in a time crunch and they'll go, to a playlist,
I'm going to go to your page here, by
dark
the way.
dark
if my eyes
cinematic
are-
or something like that, and they'll click, and if I mean, the thing about it is that they hit play on something and they're moved and they think like, oh yeah, that works, then that's totally great, because if something works, then why not just use it, But I think all of us who are on the site, we have way more music on there than I think people are accessing.
Yeah.
It would just be wonderful for myself and, my other friends who are on there. I know they would also love it if people, because every once in a while, a song will get licensed that doesn't often get licensed or something, or like a deep cut or something. And it's just, it makes me happy, because I'm just like, it's nice when people are digging a little bit deeper, because we work really hard on all the music that we create, myself and the other composers on there.
Does MusicBed give you information when somebody buys your song? Are you able to kind of see anything about where that might go?
Yes, there's spreadsheets.
Cool.
So there's spreadsheets. I don't look at them, so often, but every once in a while it's fun to pull them open and just kind of see what people are using your music for. And, we want to create stuff that's useful for filmmakers. I mean, I create my music specifically for film. That's first for me. And listenability is, I think, obviously secondary, because, I mean, Tony Anderson, who's a really very close friend of mine.
Is he? Cool.
Yeah, we're very close. And, his music is absolutely beautiful, and you can just listen to it, and it can score your film, Mine, it can score your film, but I don't know if you can listen to it, then
geared very specifically to the thing you made it for, based on the stuff that I like to listen to of yours.
Yeah.
But I bet there's some people that listen to that and they go, this is totally for me.
Well, I understand that mine is a little bit more of it's, if somebody is just listening to it, it's definitely more of like people who like listening to maybe darker music and stuff. And I gravitate towards darker tones, but I think it's also that I've just worked on projects that have needed that. And then I, release the music, because I do have other vibes and colors on there, emotional colors and stuff like that. That is another interesting thing, is that, I'm not like really a dark person, like I like to laugh. I love, it
was fun to get to meet you, because you're so nice and so delightful to speak to.
Thanks,
and I just
man.
didn't know. I was like, am I able to talk to this just badass? And he's going to go, you got 30 minutes. Because this stuff is so edgy and cool and moody.
Well, thanks.
It is, and
thanks.
I like, if anything, maybe it says more about me, not you, that I'm the one who likes to sit in the dark listening to your music.
But I love that. I mean, I love that there's other people who are more like kind of the darker tones, and I really I appreciate when people even just listen, like on Spotify or,
Well, let me be
streaming.
rude again and interrupt and compliment you, because it's not just darker tones. And I'm going to go to one of my favorites that I'm a little jealous is on MusicBed, because I don't know, I just think it fits so perfectly. You and Dan DiFelice, I want to say, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, you did a song for a Ubisoft game, Starlink.
Yes.
And your song is called When I Grow Up. And now I see it here on MusicBed. I'm going to play some of it. Never done this before on an episode. This is so good. I remember, you know what? I have no guilt for being such a fanboy.
Thank
So
you.
this is an example of, we were just talking about sitting in moody darkness. It's not just that. The first 30
Well, thanks.
seconds of the spot are beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And you guys very effectively tell, one of the coolest things about art is when it's done very well, you get to kind of fill in your own interpretations of it.
Right.
But there's this kid
Right.
walking around the woods. Obviously,
Yeah.
the cinematography's nuts. The directing is great. The
Yeah.
editing is very choice, right?
Steve Annis.
Is that the DP?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're obviously being guided along on this journey, but we're seeing this kid, and then we cut to this adult starfighter in a jet. Obviously, we have to assume it's the kid grown up.
Yes.
And that's about 2/3 of the way through the spot. We have that shift to him as an adult, and the music shifts with it to kind of like this medium paced, very cool sounds thing. And then a little over halfway to another 2/3 through, we cut to this fight in space, and the music matches or even enhances the visuals incredibly. So
Thank
you're
you.
not just moody, you're also very capable of doing this beautiful stuff.
Well, thank you.
And I would say that actually enhances it. Now, I mean, if I was to do any more, I'd be going down the tunnel of like music theory and what makes this stuff work. But I think if you're just dark, it's not as effective.
Yeah.
But you did something very beautiful.
Thank you.
And cool and
Thank
edgy.
you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys, you kind of did this space soldiers story that's like a modern Starship Troopers in 2 minutes almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, gosh, I don't even know where to start. How would I even say? Did you know that you were going to have these tone shifts in there? I guess to go. Let's do like a quick retouch on the process. Let's guide your young filmmaker listener through this again. Like, tell us a little bit about this process on this one, because Ubisoft is a big client, and then you had this very cool spot. But you said you start working once you see the treatment. So
yes,
I'm going to roll the dice and say you knew what you were doing kind of early on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And that was another beautiful treatment from Dan.
Of course it was.
It was just, it was just totally gorgeous. And I just started writing. I mean, I wrote a whole, I don't even know how long it is. How long is this? It's 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
I wrote a full album's worth of music for this.
Really?
But I mean, again, it's like a big part of it is, like, I don't take any of this stuff for granted. I wanted to be a film composer my whole life. And so, or at least when I became aware of what a film composer was, like, that's what I wanted to do. And so when these opportunities started actually happening, and, I mean, also for Dan, I mean, we're all just like, we're like giddy, nerdy schoolboys, like just so excited to get to do like a space epic kind of thing, It's like our version of Star Wars or something. And that's something that we always try to find is like, how would we approach this? What's our kind of perspective on this? Because, obviously space epic stuff is, who doesn't love, I mean, Star Wars is, of course, I don't even need to say it, but it's like, what would be our version of that be? And so just getting to sit down and write music for something like that.
What's that instrument in the beginning, that ethereal? Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's actually,
if we weren't recording, I would try to do it with my voice, but no way.
Yeah. It's actually my voice.
Stop.
And I don't sing.
That's your voice in the beginning?
Yeah, it is my voice.
That high-pitched sound? It almost sounds like I don't even know how to describe it.
So what I did is I was in a big room, and I walked around the room and did, like, I knew kind of like the chord that I was using, and I walked around the room and just made kind of weird sounds with my voice and moved to different parts of the room so that you would get this kind of stereo perspective and some separation, and just kind of made weird sounds with my voice and then layered everything on top of each other. And so it just kind of became this kind of, I was just trying to create this kind of organic kind of forest feeling, And a lot of it is just experimentation. On any one of my sessions, I use Logic to make music.
Logic is your preferred?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I use Logic. Any one of my Logic sessions, there's just an unbelievable amount of tracks. most of which are actually not active. So like I'm trying things, messing around with stuff, and most of it doesn't make it in. It's like you're just trying stuff and you're like, oh, that's cool or that's not cool. Or maybe you will do something and then later on you come back to it and then you listen to it again. You're like, oh, that's cool, but I could put it over here or something. I'm kind of always creating this enormous amount of audio that I can go excavating into and finding little moments and finding certain things. So it's a lot of experimentation. And again, it's just like you get these, you start hearing something when you see the imagery and you just try to create it, especially if you hear something in your head. It's much harder to get it out into the real world. I wish I could neuralink my brain into the computer and just think the sounds out into the computer, to record it. But yeah, so that's my voice doing weird stuff in a big room, and it kind of layers on top of itself to create kind of this organic sound.
And that's the high pitch thing.
There's also like high kind of harmonic string sounding stuff that I would have played on a cello.
It's so pretty.
Thanks,
I think
man.
So cool.
Thanks.
So I could talk to you all day. So I got to keep the podcast format.
Sorry,
going.
no. And that score in particular, because it kind of moves from section to section.
Yeah, it's very clearly in
each
sections.
section took like I spent an immense amount of time on each section. Because that was what like Dan was needing, is also for it to shift, we're shifting
you
from
get
this forest to
from
this place.
Section
And
to
then
section.
and then you're like, there is, kind of the standoff with the other guy in the ship. And then, so kind of then like the finale. But so I spent a lot of time on just exploring.
Just because I'm looking for opportunities to, I guess, share any education points. Were there any big problems on this? Did you ever get any kickback from the agency on this one? Did they go, ooh, we don't like this, or you guys have gone too moody, too creative, too hard? Or was this you turned it over with Dan the first time and they said, thank you very much, this is awesome?
I'm not, on that particular project, I wasn't as exposed on that side of things, but I mean, it basically stayed how Dan and I created it. So
sounds awesome. Nice place to be.
Thanks. Yeah, for sure. And I think, everybody was on board with the vision and the direction for it. And so,
was this one of those scenarios where you provided kind of a temporary tease for how you would do it before you went off and really committed to those sounds, like you said earlier in your process?
I just commit. I go crazy. It's like pretty much every time, like I'm just going, like if I spend 3 weeks on something and then it doesn't get used, that's just the name of the game. That's just how it is. I think that's unique to filmmaking. Like in the same way I could spend 2 weeks on a piece of music and it not get used is the same way an actor could do their favorite take they ever did and it ends up on the cutting room floor because it didn't fit in the story, or the director needed to tighten it up, and that is the heartbreak of filmmaking. That is the heartbreak, and it's no one's fault, but it's still heartbreaking, even though it's a part of the process, and I think that that's different as opposed to like making music just for the sake of like an album and I get to decide what makes it or doesn't make it, and that's the other thing, is that on an album I might have my own outtakes that I say, oh, I don't think I'll put that one on there, but it's me making that choice, not someone making the choice for me. Like, I don't know,
To turn this into a practical, or maybe like a tangible, though, on MusicBed, I see there's a whole Young Dreams album. Does that mean this was the other music you were making as you were finding the sound for the spot?
Totally.
So you were able to turn 7 songs into something you were able to monetize.
Well, and also a lot of those songs, I knew that they weren't going to get used, but I just needed to get it out of my system. Like I needed to there were certain sounds that I had, and I knew, like when I send it to Dan, I tell him sometimes, like, I know that this is like outside of the frame, like I know it's like, it's in the world, but it's outside the frame. But it was just something that I needed to create because it was like part of that story for me in my mind. And so Like, again, it's just like, when you get a treatment like that and you just start kind of creating, it's like you're sketching, and you're totally fine if most of what you have in your sketchbook is like not the final. It was just enjoyable to like sketch, and to get that stuff out. So that is what the rest of the stuff on that album is. It's just stuff that I wanted to write that was in that world, still inspired by that world.
That's pretty awesome that we all get to benefit from the work you were putting into that. I'm sure there's a lot of artists who came before us who probably left something on the cutting room floor that they wish could be out there.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally. And I've actually listened to this before, and I remember these being quite different. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask, just because, again, I got to be realistic about the time. People usually don't have this. No, you don't be sorry. I just have a lot to talk about. I'm going to go to something that I think where most of our worlds collide, whether that's filmmaking or advertising with, I'm going to say, filmmakers. I'm going to try not to throw up, content creators and composers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's temp music.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I know this from my...
don't get me started on temp music. No.
Well,
you just opened up a can of worms.
I have fallen victim to it too, because we're going into the final stages of post on the Lesions feature that I'm wrapping up, that I told you about, and I just feel awful because I backed my composer into a corner and I said, look, like, I kind of need this. I just need it with these instruments that you picked, that we decided on together, and I need it your way, and I need it to not sound like this, and I also need it to sound like this.
Right. Exactly.
The floor is yours. Tell me a little bit about your own thoughts on that, but let's take that towards how you navigate your way out of that and how you would recommend we deal with that situation. Maybe you could even say we're in the composer's lounge. What is it we should be hearing that you guys want us to know?
Well, I've been really wanting to, for many years, to make a supercut with all clips of composers, the composers that we all know and love, like talking about temp music. Okay. And this is everybody. This is Thomas Newman. This is Hans Zimmer. This is Danny Elfman. It's everybody.
So this is pretty universal.
Yeah. And in fact, it was revealed in like a composer's roundtable, I think, from the Hollywood Reporter, the very famous Thomas Newman marimba stuff from American Beauty, which is kind of his definitive score, was temped with Hans Zimmer's music. I think the track, most likely the track from True Romance, the marimba thing. But, I didn't know that. And obviously, every composer loves using marimba if we ever get the chance. But it's just really tough. I mean, it's like I understand the practical use for temp music. I totally understand it, but it never makes it easier. And I think mainly because most composers have an enormous amount of respect for other composers. Not only an enormous amount of respect, but talking about like the greats, it's really hard for a composer to not feel intimidated by this piece of music that they're up against. And you really do feel like you're up against it,
Up against the temp music that somebody has placed into their spot when they say, it's easy, we'll just do this, but our own way.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, because it's just so, like, for instance, for me, if something comes to me and it's temped with, I don't know, like Hans Zimmer, Cornfield Chase, Yeah.
Good example.
That is the example. There's a handful of tracks that I'm always
Is that one that you have seen floating around out there that people try to use?
It's just over and over and over and over and over.
I got a few that I spot that
sure.
It's kind of like when you first hear the album, you feel like you heard a garage band and you're like, oh, cool. I was one of the first here. And then when you hear someone copy it, you kind of want to throw something at the TV and be like, you hack, you stole that. That was Jed Kurzel's Alien Covenant.
Okay. Oh, I love this though.
He did some awesome stuff in Alien Covenant.
It's incredible.
And then over the years, hey, I get it. There's this one called Med Bay, and it's from a very tense sequence in the film that has to do with a med bay.
Yeah.
You've seen it?
Dude, I love this film.
I do too. Everyone who doesn't like it is just wrong, and I'm tired of letting people subjective
I grew up
opinions.
on Alien films.
Okay, great.
My dad raised me on Alien films.
There are several songs in Alien Covenant that are very good and very iconic.
Right. So, okay, let's take that as
some people, by the way, people bought them.
Yeah.
A Quiet Place Day One was the most recent one I could think of. And I get it. And you know what? I would rather somebody just buys it somehow, whatever they did. I'd rather they just buy it and just shamelessly go, you know what? It's so good. Yeah. We're just going to buy Cornfield Chase and use it again.
Totally.
Because I get it. And Medbay was one of those ones where they did it. There was another one, Overlord. It was like this World War II zombie movie. They used it too. In the opening sequence when they're like dropping out of the sky, and it just so you it's almost like when you hear a song that's so good, but see, then sometimes you hear these ripoffs and you're like, of course, oh no.
But when you hear the ripoff, it's usually a composer who's up against. It's a composer.
I'm so glad you said that.
Between a rock and a hard place, because the composer will most likely never choose to rip something off. The composer always wants to have his own creative expression and have his own voice and approach the scene, in his own unique creative way. And, whether it's a director or a producer or whoever is kind of pushing to get closer to the temp, and so this is when you hear that, you probably more have to blame the director or the producer or
this is what we needed to do. We needed to do a little bit of fencing here to get to this point because I need we need somebody to stand up for the composers.
Of course.
And have some empathy for them.
Yes.
Because
so your example with Jed Kurtzel's Alien Covenant, that's a really good example, because when that is temped on something, when that comes to a composer, he's a fantastic composer. He was able to, I think on that score, he collaborated with the London Contemporary Orchestra, and they did all these really interesting, cool things. And it's that kind of stuff that starts to feel very intimidating, because it's like, as a composer, you're like, of course, I wish I could work with the LCO on this, I wish I could, or like in the case of Cornfield Chase, it's like, I would love to go into a cathedral and record a pipe organ. And so when this is thrown at you, it's like, not only are the odds stacked against you just because of the fact that these are beloved pieces of music,
right,
and are sort of in the fabric of our filmmaking culture, but just the mechanics of those scores, you can't, it would be hard to top, the production value, you know what I mean? I would love to have access to the LCO and collaborate with them. I would love to have access to the church organ and, record the rest of the score at Air Lyndhurst.
Yeah.
And so you're not only up against something that's beautiful and amazing, but you're up against the production value of it that you're not equipped to match. And so I think that that's a really good point, is that it's like, where oftentimes composers are, we're not given any time and we're not given any budget, but we're supposed to outdo, a Hans Zimmer track or a Jed Kurtzel track or whatever, or and so it's tough, man. But so that's one of the major challenges of creating music for film, and the temp track.
No. I stay fiery. Keep going to bat for your brothers and sisters, because this is really good. Because I'm even glad, even though I could edit it out. I don't want to edit out.
Yeah.
I baited myself into sounding like a punk a little bit, because now that I'm talking to you and you said, hey, that's not on us. We're not the ones asking to do that. And I thought, oh, shoot, he's right.
Yeah.
I'm literally doing it to somebody myself right now.
Oh, my gosh.
Later this afternoon, I will go in and go, make it sound more like this.
Right.
Totally. And so I'm glad you're advocating for composers on this front.
Well, just know that it's a big part of it is that you're not giving, a lot of times the composer isn't given the resources to create what those temp tracks are creating.
Right.
Because of the amount of just money that it would cost to go in and use a real orchestra or string ensemble, or use a real...
What about the ones who do have the resources? Can I be shiesty towards them?
Yeah, then it's like, yeah,
No, what about the composer though? We got to stick
yeah,
up. So you're totally right though. I know what you mean because so I'll use this example. I don't know what happened, but like I remember I wanted to just throw a tennis ball at the TV, but the great Johan Johansson, rest in
yeah.
peace,
Rest in
from
peace.
Sicario,
Yeah,
which just that was another one of those tracks
of
that
course. The
people have
Beast.
been they just probably are just trying to steal it. But one of the ones is
It's
the
amazing.
highway scene,
Okay,
the
of
what am I
course.
the border
Yeah,
scene. That's right, the border.
yeah,
That's the proper word.
yeah.
And I mean, Sicario, it's just so good.
Oh
Johan,
yeah.
whatever they did, that was such a dream team between Denis, Deakins, Josh Brolin, Johan, all the just insane. I mean, even they
Yeah.
can't recapture it.
It's lightning in a bottle. It's so
Yeah.
amazing.
But I remember years ago watching Daredevil season 2 on
Okay.
Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 or 3. And sure enough, here it
Yeah.
comes. There's
Yeah.
some sort of shootout on the road in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and they're doing some stuff. And you're just like, I know these drums. I know this
Yes.
beat. You can't.
Yes.
And then you hear the 2 or 3 things that got modified
Yeah.
and you're just like you can try to put a mask on this as
Yeah.
much as you want, but I know what's under there.
Yeah. I mean,
However,
I've been up against that track myself.
get out of here, really.
Of course. Yeah.
Now, see, but now that you're talking, I'm so glad you are. Continue to fight for them, your brothers and
Yeah.
sisters,
Well,
because now I feel bad because I see the composer sitting there
yeah.
with the producers and the director going
Yeah.
just like, hey, we need this. So to turn this into something
Yeah.
actionable for
Yeah.
our filmmakers,
Yes.
what would if the composers have the floor for a minute, how do
Yeah.
we fix this? How do we not do
Yeah.
this? How do we not fall into this trap?
Just be open to, just know that it's not going to be the same piece of music. The temp is bringing a certain energy and a certain emotion and a certain feel to that scene, which is working.
Mm-hmm.
And the composer will need to try to create that same emotion and that same energy, but hopefully
Mm-hmm.
in a unique way, in its
Yeah.
own way that also fits the film. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you try to supply us with some of the language? Because not everybody is literate in how to speak.
Okay. A good question to ask is like, what is the temp doing for the scene? Is there something rhythmic that's helping propel the scene forward?
Yeah, so let's stick to that one, the border
You know what I
scene.
mean?
You know, if we're workshopping that, if we're
Yeah.
the ones on this Daredevil, whatever it was,
Yeah.
and we're struggling to communicate with you,
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, what is it, the rhythmic thing? And I would have to be like, oh, man, you know, and I'm imagining them a little bit, so I'm not giving them much credit. But
Yeah.
I would probably guess they're like, oh, it's that heart pounding drums, the bum,
Yes.
ba, ba, bum,
Yeah.
bum, bum, ba, ba, the pacing. And I
Yeah.
would probably say, we need that somehow.
Yeah.
We need that
Yeah.
because that is carrying the scene. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I need you to do something like that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a pickle. How do we navigate that?
Yeah. So then the composer just does something rhythmic, pulsing and rhythmic that, you know, I mean, pulsing and rhythmic is universal. I mean, you can't, I mean, so it's just like, if that's the thing that's really working for you as the director, that it's, you know, it has this kind of pounding and pulsing, and you're like, yeah, that's really what's making the scene work for me.
Yeah.
Then the composer just needs to create something pulsing like that and, you know, help propel the scene forward.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's totally fine. The thing that's not so great is when they keep pushing for it to be pretty much exactly the same thing,
Right.
you know? And that's when temp love comes into play.
Yep.
And I think a really good, exercise for directors and producers is to just try to resist temp love, you know, and to just know, like, that's a great piece of music. It does something really good for the scene, but it's not our music. It doesn't belong to us. It doesn't even really fit the DNA of the film because you've created a whole different sound world.
Yeah.
And to try to make an effort to let it go. And the composer will be working and sweating bullets to try to create something
Yeah.
that serves the scene in the way that temp was serving the scene. The composer wants to serve the film and serve the vision of the director, but the composer also does not want to plagiarize
Yeah.
someone else's amazing idea. Like, Johann is a genius. And also he worked with geniuses.
Yeah,
You know,
sure
he
did.
collaborated with like great people who would bring all these amazing sounds to the table as well, like
Yeah.
Hildur Gunnadóttir and
Yeah, I think Hildur picked up Sicario 2, if I recall correctly, which she also did some cool stuff. And then, of course, goes on to Joker and just blows everyone away.
yeah. But she played a lot of that stuff on the first Sicario. So
Did she?
yeah, she was heavily involved in a lot of his scores.
See, primarily listening on Spotify, I usually only see the lead name. I don't see a lot of those on there.
Yeah, I mean, I love like liner notes too. I mean, it's the same with like the old jazz records.
What's that?
Where,
liner notes?
Like liner notes. I mean, that's what we're missing.
What is
now,
that?
Like back in the day when you would get like a record, an album, or a CD.
Oh, you mean like the little booklet that we would get with
and those are the liner notes.
Not all about those.
I mean, we
have a whole generation of people who doesn't even know what those are.
Oh yeah, I mean, I still buy the CDs because speaking of rest in peace, Johann.
Oh man, I love that one. We're looking at the Last and First Men album from Johann
so good.
Johansson. There's some great ones in there.
Yeah,
heavy stuff on that one.
But you know, especially like on the Spielberg John Williams scores, you know, Spielberg always writes a little thing about the score and about John Williams in the liner notes.
Yeah.
But also the liner notes is where you see who mixed it, who mastered it, who recorded it. And these are the nerdy, this is that next level of nerdiness. And like on like old jazz records, it was always like, they were always playing on each other's records. So, you know, and so like, that's also what we're missing with Spotify is like the liner notes where you see, okay, like who's playing on whose record basically, or who's helping out with whose score, you know.
We should message them, tell them to bring that back.
Well, I wish that there was liner notes like on streaming platforms because I just think it would be so interesting. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting and it's sometimes even hard to find that information.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to kind of speed round. I'm going to condense like 20 questions into 2 or 3.
But was that satisfying for you?
Absolutely.
About the temp
music?
I'm
glad you kind of came back at me with that too, because we need to hear that, you know?
Well, it's you can't always push back the way you would like to.
This is a good time to do it though.
But yeah, this is given the opportunity, I thank you.
Well, and part of the reason I'll be bad and kind of dip back into it for a second. Part of the reason I asked if there's a technique, because maybe in the composer lounge, maybe you guys are just hanging over your whiskey and you're just like, oh my gosh, I just wish that these directors would bring us in before they start putting temp music in.
Well, I mean, that is another way to prevent is by, like, for instance, I mean, this is how Dan and I work. Mm-hmm. He'll send me the treatment and the script up front and I'll start creating, you know, so we're creating our own material. And also like how Christopher Nolan worked with Hans Zimmer on the films that they did together, where there isn't room for temp music because there's already so much music that like Hans was writing, right? That nothing else was being put on the timeline. So that's a really good position to be in. And I think, I mean, that is also where I see the other side of it, where I know that like music is it's the emotional kind of magic and the emotional material. And so, you know, why would an editor not want music on their timeline, and why would a director not want again, it's proof of concept to see if that scene is working, and you can really see if it's working once you have music under there, you know. But to go back to kind of identify what's working about that piece of temp music, have the composer then, you know, whether it's propulsion or emotion or whether it makes me scared or makes me feel sad, the composer can replace that and it doesn't have to sound like the temp.
Can I hybrid morph this into just turn this into a give us a tip? If we're young, if we're anybody, it doesn't have to be young, up and coming, it could be anybody. Yeah. Don't hold back. What would the Composers Lounge say if you could change something about the process? What would you have us do? You can pick anything.
Like in the filmmaking process?
Anything. Yes. But yes, in the filmmaking process. But I mean, it don't restrict yourself. And if you have more than one, you know, let it rip.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that that's the big one.
That's the big one. The
no temp music would be the big one.
Got it.
And I know it's not realistic, but it's honest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if the tables were turned and I say like I was
Yeah.
like executive producing a project and I was
Yeah.
like I'm the composer, but I'm like
Yeah.
I'm paying for this. If I strung together a bunch of like
Yeah.
existing clips of
Mm-hmm.
Roger Deakins and, you know, Janusz Kaminski or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
was forcing the director to replace those clips, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know. It's difficult to replace legendary,
Yeah.
incredible stuff. So I would say like the temp track thing is, I mean, and that's why I want to put together a supercut, because it doesn't matter which composer it is. All the
Yeah.
legends, it's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And you would think like, yeah, but you're like Thomas Newman. What temp track would be nothing to, no, it's like,
Yeah.
it's the same for everybody. So that's a big one. And I think that is why getting the composer involved early is really cool. Because also, you know, composers are also filmmakers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like we're filmmakers. I mean, I love movies. I mean, I'm a movie freak, you know, I love watching movies. That's why I got into this. And so we also study, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you know, all kinds of aspects of filmmaking. And so, I mean, that's one of the cool things
Yeah.
that I appreciate with Dan and some of the other directors that I work with, is that I'm allowed in earlier on in the process, and I just get to be involved in discussions and just kind of being creative, and it's fun for me.
I have to consolidate all these things that I would like to say about your sounds, but it would just be garble since I am instrument illiterate.
No
But
worries.
your music often feels like it belongs in a movie. I think that's what
Well,
makes it
thanks.
so
I
cool,
appreciate
whether
that.
it's a
Yeah.
short film or a commercial.
Thanks, man.
How do you use some really cool stuff, by the way, which I wish we will have to do this again for like
Yeah.
a deeper dive or something.
Yeah,
You
sure.
do from what I can just guess, you do cool things with the instruments.
Yes.
But
Well, I try
one
to.
thing that, well, you do. One thing that's
man.
been consistent is it just feels just like grand and deep in like the product. You know, you talked about having to compete with, you know, studio caliber stuff where there's more resources than what you have, but you wouldn't know it from listening to your stuff.
Well,
How have
thanks.
you, I guess, for the last X amount of years, you've been putting out studio quality stuff? Has there been some sort of like mindset or something? How have you made it seem so big and grand? And big doesn't
Well,
mean
thanks.
100 violins.
Yeah.
Just something feels like big. You know, it's kind of like, you know, when people look at I'm going to dumb it down, but like a video or something, and they go,
Yeah.
"Oh, that looks cinematic." This is like the
Right.
sound
Right.
equivalent of that, where
Sure.
people don't even
Sure.
know how to articulate what makes
Sure.
something quote cinematic.
Yeah.
They just go, "Oh, that sounds cinematic." Like you know,
Yeah.
your Starlink commercial is like, that's a movie. That's a movie song, you know,
Right.
caliber stuff
Well,
right there.
thanks.
So
Yeah.
if you're able to dive in for a minute on your process, what are you doing to make that work? Is there, and you can get technical too, but I'm just curious, how does it sound so big and so legitimate?
Well, thanks. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm really thankful for is that over the years, I think a lot of times, like, our limitations are what maybe some interesting things get birthed out of the limits that you're working within. And I think, you know, of course, it was always my dream to work with like a full orchestra, but I never had the budget or the opportunity to do that. And so I always thought, okay, I was like, if I want to work with 200 musicians, I need to know how to work with one musician. So I'm going to start with one. I started bringing in friends of mine who played orchestral instruments.
Yeah.
I had a good friend, Mary, in Colorado, who was really a huge part of this process. You know, she came and she plays cello, and she came in and she was just very kind, and she didn't make me feel dumb, you know, because I'm not a traditionally trained musician. I started creating music through making hip hop music and DJing.
Didn't know that.
So yeah. So I don't have a classical training or classical background. And so I was totally scared to death, you know, but she came in and she was so kind, and she was just so nice to me, and she just allowed me to like not know what I was doing and to help me out. And if there was something that I was trying to figure out. She was like, oh yeah, I can play it like this, or I can play it like that, or I can do open strings, or I can do it like this, or like, do you want me to do like a slurred legato, or like instead of sliding on the thing, you do it with like. So anyway, I started to really enjoy this process of working one-on-one with a musician. So the funny thing is that as much as I still would love to work with a full orchestra, which I've only kind of been able to do a few times, well, not full orchestra, like more than one player at a time, I've started to really love this process of just doing it one by one and creating sounds.
One by one, meaning instrument by instrument?
Yeah.
Track
So
by track? Okay.
in my room, like I'll bring in just a cello player and then just a viola player, and then I'll sit with them and I get to learn so much about their instrument, how different notes sound on the different strings. Like you can do the same note on different strings and one string will sound slightly darker, one slightly brighter. And it's just so fun to explore with these incredible musicians that I get to work with. And I think that has become a part of just the way I work and probably contributes to the way my stuff sounds. I think that I think as filmmakers, whether we're composers or directors, we all have tendencies that I think we can't sort of get away from. And I think it's those tendencies that become our artistic voice, as opposed to trying to find your voice. I think you can't help but to have your voice, and it's probably harder to get away from it than it is to try to find it, because we do have tendencies, and a lot of times we don't even know that we're doing certain things, but we just kind of we gravitate towards certain sounds. And I think a lot of the stuff that's in my music is just stuff that I just gravitate towards. And I don't always, I do have techniques and things that I use, I mean, I'm really into bass. I like heavy bass, which comes probably from making hip hop music. Yeah. But I love like when it hits you in the chest. I love when stuff feels like wide, like really wide, and really like if it fills like the room. Like my friend Tony Anderson, he'll send me something when he's working on it, and it just is like, I'm like, dude, how do you get, it just is like the biggest sound in the world. And I'm like, how on earth do you do this? It just fills like the whole room,
I'm assuming all artists do this, but it's if nothing else, it's nice to hear that you're also, as great as you are at this, you're also suffering when you hear someone else doing something great.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's probably also just that I like sound. And I just like to have like 80, sometimes way too many layers like of stuff going on. But I just like this, like really, I love like rich harmonics. I like really where there's just like a dense harmonic information and full spectrum and really heavy. Yeah. So yeah.
I've heard some tangible takeaways in what you're saying. I mean, I've heard you enjoy it first and foremost, which you like it enough to be interested in it. And by being interested in it, you're already giving it a quality. And so now you've shown interest in a single thing that's going to take up a single track. Yeah. Which you've said you like a lot of tracks, and then you like harmonic sounds. So you're harmonizing. Am I saying that correctly? The multitude of tracks together. Yeah. So
it's exactly the same as a set. Somebody who builds the set, they build the shell, of the set, and then they put the sheetrock on, and then they, put the structure together. But then the fun part is like painting the walls and texturing the walls. And then once you've painted the walls, if it's a scene where the apartment or whatever is supposed to be old, then you start ruining the walls. So what you've just created, you then start ruining it and start weathering it. And I think that's the sound process that I also love, is that I will create something, but then after I create it, I start weathering it and texturing it and breaking it down. And because I think one of the things with my music that I always want is that I want it to feel like it was found under the floorboards of the story. You know what I mean? Like you started tearing down the wallpaper and it was already there. It's already a part of that world. And I think that's kind of how I see it, because I'm sort of trying to pull what's already in the story out in a musical way. And so it's like you're sort of creating, and then you're kind of weathering it. And then for instance, like I saw a thing where David Fincher was like, they're like, why do you do 1,000 takes, And one of the many reasons he gives is like, when that kid walks into the room and throws his backpack down, you want it to look like he does that every day. He just walks in and throws his backpack in the same place every day. You want to have this feeling that it's already there, like it's been there. And I think with the music, I'm kind of obsessed. And that's also how I do my graphic design as well. Like I spend an unbelievable amount of time. Like I make the design, but then after I make the design, I want it to look like it's actually printed on paper. Mm-hmm. And then the paper is a little bit ripped and the ink is kind of smudged and like, it's imperfect. And then I think these imperfections are what are kind of like in Star Wars, like George Lucas created the used future. And that's kind of what sold it. It wasn't this shiny new. It's in the future, but it was already old. So it's that kind of an approach that I think I'm kind of always looking for.
You do some really cool stuff with instruments. Can you at least just give us a quick thing? I feel like this is one of your iconic sounds. Some of the stuff that you do with the stringed instruments. But can you tell us what this massive instrument is over your shoulder here in your studio?
Okay, so that's a contrabass.
Contrabass, okay.
Yeah, that's the biggest stringed instrument in the orchestra. So it's large. It's the bass of the orchestra.
And you do things with that to get the sounds that you get sometimes, right? Like not the way you're supposed to play it.
Totally. You can get just nasty, gnarly, growling stuff on there.
That's cool.
And then you start hanging stuff on it, like anything you find around the studio, you just like hang it on the strings and you just start doing crazy, dark, scary things.
I think I've heard some of it, but I'm definitely.
I used it a lot. I did my first feature a couple years ago.
Was that Anomaly?
With my friend. No, that was Dan and Saul, and that was a while back. But I did a feature a few years ago that's not even out yet.
Oh, okay.
So my friend Logan Marshall directed it. He's a director from New Zealand, and it's kind of a dark thriller. And I used that a lot on there. I basically played all the strings on that album. There's a lot of tension, and so I misuse these instruments to create tension. Yeah. So that's why it's really great to have that, even though I don't play it, the way it's supposed to be played. These are really useful for me to have around when I'm working on something that just needs just grit, and I can just grab it and start experimenting. And then again, I might have 10 to 12 tracks of just experimentation, and then I can go through and find interesting moments and apply it where I need to,
Yeah. I'm going to wind us down for this session with, in my opinion, the great composer, Luke Atencio.
Thank you so much.
But for our listeners who might be thinking about working with a composer like you, what's the best way for them to reach out or explain what they want in order for you to have a successful collaboration with you?
Yeah, well, if they want to work with me specifically, they can get a hold of me through my website,
which is
lukeatencio.com.
lukeatencio.com.
And I'm on Instagram.
And he's back on Instagram.
I was gone for 8 years, and now I'm back, and I'm gonna stick around.
What's that Luke Atencio Instagram? I'm gonna go find it.
Luke Atencio Music.
Luke Atencio Music. There we go. All right.
And you can find my music on your favorite streaming platform.
Everything. SoundCloud, Apple Music, Spotify.
Yeah.
MusicBed, if you want to use Luke's music and the music we talked about, license it, and license some of those special unused tracks we talked about.
Yeah, go do a deep dive into my catalog and other artists' catalog on there. Yeah. Because you're going to find some gems.
And then go to his Instagram and tell him which one you like.
Yeah, please do. I need to turn on the comments.
Turn the comments back on. All right, Luke.